Greetings, everyone. Welcome to a Let's Tinker edition of the DC Current. I'm your host, Damon Caskey. Today is less of a how-to and more of a simple documentary, as all we're really up to is adding a bit of storage space to this old Dell PowerEdge server tower. Like always, there's nothing to it but to do it, so let's get started. Alright then, so I've slid the server out to a more physically accessible location and set up a work light. Our first step from here will be to disconnect the power and the network before we can actually break the server down. Simple enough in both cases. We'll set those aside. Now for these Dell PowerEdge servers, there's not a whole lot to breaking them down. Just unlock the front key, slide the breakdown tab to the right, and the front cover hinges down. Then you can simply pull it off, set it to the side. The side cover is held in place by 3 thumb-type Phillips screws. Oops, slight mistake I just made there. Always start from bottom and go to top. Once you have the screws loose, just pull this tab forward, cover will slide, and it pops right off. Again, we'll set that to the side. Now let's see what we're up against. Here we are inside the mind of the machine. As you can see, all 3 types of the most common controller protocols are represented, but for our purposes of adding some mass storage, only one is really viable. First, I wouldn't even touch an IDE device these days without feeling a little dirty inside, so that one's right out. And while it's all well and good there's a powerful onboard SCSI controller, the benefits of SCSI simply do not outweigh the economic infeasibility, so that's relegated to running the system drive, leaving only serial ATA. But our serial ATA controller has issues of its own, which I'll get to in just a moment. Here's our current SATA installation. 6 years ago, this was quite the impressive device. 8 ports, fully RAID capable, and even had hot swap support. Unfortunately, time has simply passed it by. Even with firmware upgrades, this guy does not support anything larger than 1 terabyte, and these days, that simply isn't enough. So, out with the old, in with the new. Here's our new controller. As far as superfluous capabilities are concerned, this thing is nowhere near the device it will supplant. RAID support is limited to 0 or 1, and it can only handle 2 devices at once. However, we are dealing with the reality of an aged motherboard. Finding a controller that could handle large capacity modern drives and was PCI 33 compliant left us with a limited palette of choices. Fortunately, RAID 1 is exactly what I intend to use, and I only intend to install 2 hard drives. So, this device does happen to fill our needs. Let's get it installed and get this thing running. For now, I'm going to slide this back into the static bag. I'll sit that aside. Grab my bag of tools. All I really need is a Phillips screwdriver. And let's see. Here we are. We'll start, actually, by disconnecting our cables. Should be able to work the rest of that out by hand. All right. Now we'll make room for our new controller by removing this cover. Set the screws aside here. Take the new controller out of the static bag, discharge myself. And just fit it right back in here. Sometimes these things can be a little bit tight. There we are. Go ahead and plug in my SATA cables here. And I want to mark which cable is which. Okay. So left is in, right is out. Now I will replace the mounting screw. Hopefully I'm coordinated enough to actually do that with one hand. Now I'm not going to tighten that completely just yet. We'll want to test it first. Now the next step will be to actually mount the drives. So, we'll disconnect our SCSI system drive here, and then slide our drive cartridge away. And we'll take the first of our two drives out of the static bag. I'm going to slide them in on the bottom. Take the second out of its static bag, same thing. Just slide it in. I'm not going to use mounting screws at first because, again, we're testing here. And we'll just slide the drive cartridge back into place. Now I will reconnect the system drive. So there's our, there's our SCSI cable. And there's our power cable. Now we'll do the same thing with our SATA drive. SATA drives, excuse me. I'm sorry if the camera is at some odd angles here. This is a bit difficult to do one-handed. Okay. Now, normally, I'd probably only hook up one drive at once and test them individually, but I'm actually in a bit of a hurry here, so I'm just going to go ahead and put everything together, try it out all at once. So I'll give my cables one last check. Make sure I'm not getting into the fans. Okay. And it looks like, for now, that we are good to go. So I'm going to set my tools off to the side here. And I'm going to hook up a testing keyboard and a testing mouse. Alright, now that we're ready to test, I've mounted the camera so that it won't be shaking all over the place while I work. So let's fire up this server and see what we get. If my guess is correct, and it should be, we will of course see the regular post test, then the SCSI controller should initialize. After that, our new SATA controller should initialize, and I'll be able to enter in a key combination to get to the BIOS control and set up our RAID. Alright, post is complete. There is the SCSI controller initializing. And there is our, yes, there is the BIOS for our new SATA controller. So without further delay, let's create an array. We're going to use array 1, that is for mirroring. We'll select the only 2 disks that we have. Start the creation process. I do not care about old data because there is no old data. So continue. There it is. Now I'll confirm the selection and should be able to escape. Good. Now we'll reboot the system. This time I'll let the BIOS complete. And once that happens, the operating system should come up as normal. We'll go into the logical disk configuration, and hopefully we will see our array as a singular disk. Now that the server has successfully passed post with the RAID in place, we're going to log in remotely and see if we can locate the array through the Logical Disk Manager. Excellent. The array is visible and ready for use. In some cases a driver install would be needed, but for this installation that wasn't necessary. Time to start up some boring data migration, so here's where I leave you. This is Damon Caskey signing out for the DC Current. Thanks for listening everyone, and we'll see you next time.